Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I need to give some context before I talk about this movie. So, from your perspective, you're getting this review a couple of days after the review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. From my perspective of when I'm recording this a month or two after watching the other Guardians movies. I mean, thankfully, I'm lucky this time. It's still, compared to when I originally was watching these movies, because I originally watched them in the order of, actually, no, I think I did watch them in order, but it was when they came out, and it was so much time between movies, I forgot a lot of things, and this time I'm watching them backwards, which was not the plan, but it's just my parents kept wanting to watch these with me, and I recorded this one on YouTube TV, because that's where I'm finding all of these a while ago, but it's we finally got around where they're oh, hey, let's watch this one. I'm oh, okay, even though it's a couple months after the other one. And that's kind of determining the order of things, of just when I'm recording stuff and when they decide to watch, because, and I thought I was just going to be talking about the Guardians movies, but then I recorded Avengers Endgame, which I was gonna watch by myself, not even related to watching these. I just thought, okay, I'll rewatch it again, because I'd only seen it when it came out in theaters, and they're okay, let's watch that one tomorrow. So you're getting a really weird order for me of the backwardsness of going through the Guardians movies, and then going the jump from going from this one and going straight to Endgame is gonna be crazy, especially because as we're watching, this is the one I think that introduces Thanos and the Infinity Stones, and as I was watching the movie, my dad was who's Thanos? And then when my parents were yeah, we're gonna watch Endgame tomorrow, and I was telling my mom, I'm I'm gonna have so much more stuff to explain to you while we're watching this movie, because it's not only because it's you need Infinity War to set up Endgame, but it's besides knowing the stuff about the Guardians, it's you gotta know about the other Marvel characters too, so that it's such a weird point to go from introducing Thanos in this one and having the Guardians and their adventures, and then going straight to everyone in the Marvel universe or whatever trying to beat Thanos. So yeah, if I'm going through these in kind of a weird order in terms of when these are getting I'm posting these in the order I'm watching them this time, and if it seems I'm missing context for stuff with the next review, that's why. Okay, I just wanted to explain about that real quick. I think I've seen this might be my third time seeing this. I remember I saw it in theaters. I loved it immediately. It was so good. This was the movie, or really just the Guardians movies, but I think mostly just this one that got me of okay, I'm actually interested in watching Marvel movies. So my perspective with those is I think I've watched, in terms of the movies between this and Endgame, I was actually trying, after Endgame, I just kind of gave up when I stopped watching the movies altogether. But yeah, it was between this and Endgame, I was actively trying to watch stuff. But if it's anything before Endgame, it's I didn't know or care about the Marvel movies, or knew that they were connected, or Iron Man or Captain America, and those are all really good ones too. I need to watch those eventually. I at least bought Avengers, the first Avengers movie from 2012 or whatever, which feels so long ago. I think on Amazon Prime, so I'm gonna watch that too, but that's unfortunately gonna be after Endgame probably. Okay, but yeah, let's talk about this one. It's really good. I wish I could remember, because I said, I recorded the other Guardian reviews a couple months ago, and I don't remember in my mental ranking of the three of them what I was putting in there. I think I kept swapping movies. This one is just a I almost want to say it's perfect, but that feels like too high praise. It's just really well done. I mean, they all are, but I feel like especially this one of like setting up and bringing all these characters together and then having to like introduce the concept of like Thanos and the Infinity Stones, but it's in like baby steps, you know, where it's like you're kind of learning it as like, you know, just part of the story of this movie, but then, you know, eventually it like slowly becomes more and more important as you're like going through these movies and stuff. And it's kind of weird rewatching this one, not just like, you know, after the existence of like Endgame and Infinity War and stuff, where you like really get to see all this stuff with Thanos, even though he's not like the main villain here, he's still like important, but also it's kind of feels weird watching. It's like a different perspective of watching this one after watching the other two from like the stuff I remember, where a lot of the lines characters will bring up, you know, end up being more important with like their backstories. Like I was especially paying attention to a lot of the stuff that Rocket says. Like there's a part when he's drunk and he's talking about how he was like torn apart and put back together and stuff, and how he like views himself as a monster. And I remember throughout the third movie, the main villain, I think he's called the Evolutionary, and he's constantly referring to Rocket by his specific like you know, like code name he's like classified by or whatever, rather than like what he chooses to be called as Rocket. And I forgot that wasn't just like specifically something the Evolutionary called him. It was, you know, even when the characters get arrested and stuff, he's still referred to by that number. And remembering about like his backstory and everything when it's like finally fully revealed in the third movie, I think makes some of the stuff in this kind of hit harder. And it's same with the stuff with like with Peter as well. I mean, they do kind of go like a bit more into that of like, but it's more of like to set up the next movie where you hear Yondu talk about like, yeah, we shouldn't have, you know, it's good that we didn't give him to his dad, about like, you know, calling his dad as a jackass. And then the Nova Corps people saying like, hey, Peter, we did this scan of you and your DNA isn't like completely human. We don't know what your dad is. He's some kind of like ancient being or whatever. And it sets up, you know, the second movie where you get to meet Peter's dad and find out what he actually is. So that one's like a bit more, you know, direct to set up the next movie. But, you know, even after watching that one and then coming back to this one where it's all kind of pieced together, and it makes the stuff with like Peter and his mom like a lot sadder too, of watching that, like the very first scene in the movie of him in the hospital, you know, where his mom's dying of cancer, and knowing that his dad like purposely put the tumor in her head and everything, and seeing his grandpa as well, Peter's grandpa. I was thinking about that because I completely forgot with this one that it was, you know, the mom was like literally about to pass away, and she tells Peter like, your grandpa's gonna take such good care of you, and then Peter leaves the hospital and gets like taken by Yondu. So I feel like all of that just makes more sense now, knowing that like, you know, Ego wanted, you know, hired Yondu and the Ravengers and stuff to take Peter. And it was like a really good thing they kept Peter as part of their crew instead, and it like basically saved his life and everything. And Yondu was like pretty much just his dad from that point onwards. But yeah, anyway, the stuff with the grandpa, I forgot that the grandpa was supposed to take care of Peter and everything, and how he was like kind of mad at his grandpa. But you know, he's like grieving his daughter as well, who's also about to die. That's got to be really hard. And then having to like, you know, you're going to have to look after your grandson and everything. It was just like a lot going on. I was like really trying to pay attention to that hospital scene where there's just like all of those people in there. They kind of just seemed like they were waiting for the mom to die. I mean, I know there's not really much else you can do in that situation, especially when you know someone's about to die. You have to like, you want to be there with them in their last moments, you know. But yeah, thinking about that and like watching that scene again, and then thinking about how with the third one, you know, Peter goes back to Earth and isn't involved with Space Diff anymore, but like more specifically goes to live with his grandpa, and just kind of like the whole route of like what family means to him and his background and stuff. Now that I've been like watching these, even though they're all backwards, it kind of ends really nicely, you know. Like I remember when I watched the third one originally, I was kind of bummed that like I thought he was mostly leaving just, you know, because he couldn't get over Gamora and everything, and I was like, why is he going back to Earth, and why is it such a big deal for him to like go to his grandfather? Now that I'm like thinking through all of it, it's, you know, in a way of like staying in space. And I think Gamora is one of the characters that like kind of calls Peter out on it in this as well, of like, and I think some of the other characters too, if I remember right, of like you're running away from something, you didn't go, or no, I think it's Yondu actually, not Gamora, I'm sorry, who says something to Peter of like, oh, you don't care about Earth at all, you could have gone back and you didn't, you're like running away. Because it's like throughout these movies, in a sense, Peter's just kind of running away from his past in a sense, and then in the third one it's like he goes back to Earth and finally gets to live with his grandfather, and, you know, gets to live like, in a sense, the normal life he was supposed to have, you know. So it's funny, it's like, as I've been going back through the movies, and especially with accidentally kind of starting with the third one, the more I like think about it and stuff, and watching these in that specific order, the more I think I kind of understand and appreciate how the third one ended. Like, I come more into terms with it, if that makes sense. The same with Gamora too, because I also forgot, like, I knew, you know, she's like the daughter of Thanos, and like her whole stuff with Nebula and everything, about how they've been like pitted against each other since they were kids, and then, you know, with the third one where, you know, she's basically like a different person, but you get to see that she's found like a new kind of found family with the Ravengers and stuff. But I'd forgotten some stuff with her. I think kind of more specifically, I forgot about how she was like before she gets roped in, and all the stuff with like the orb and the Guardians before they become the Guardians, you know, where she gets loaned. I completely forgot about like Ronan as well, that like Gamora and her sister get loaned out to him, and what his whole plan was and everything. And now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like, you know, with the way Gamora is in the third movie, there's like no way, you know, no matter how much they jogged her memory and how much like Peter was sad about her, that she probably could have ended up down the same route she originally did. Because it all kind of depends. I was like really paying attention to how like her character develops in this movie over time, you know, and it entirely, I think, depends on like not only the story in this one, of how she ends up growing closer with the Guardians, but, you know, originally none of the characters want anything to do with each other. And they're all like immediately saying, except for Peter, of like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you guys when this is over or whatever. And it's more of like they end up becoming a group and becoming friends. Like, they do sort of become friends, not really like true companions, but at least seeming like they somewhat care about each other. It doesn't take that long, but that only really gets to start because they're, you know, they have to stay together for the orb. Or otherwise they would have just probably left immediately and whatever. It's like lucky they ended up getting arrested. I mean, I think by the time they're in jail, which isn't even that far into the movie, I noticed it was kind of at that point they were sort of starting to care for each other, like a little bit. And, you know, none of them had known each other. And then it's like weird in the third movie, you know, they've already been through all this stuff and Gamora doesn't remember any of it. So I think in that context of like, without the first movie existing, without her not having the chance to go through that, because, you know, that was like a one-time thing and everyone else is already like close companions and stuff, I don't think there was a way for her to get back to her original self. But it is kind of nice how quickly in this one they do start to care for each other. I think what I noticed the fastest, and I was kind of surprised, it seems like Rocket's the one that kind of starts to care at first. Like, I noticed he kind of latches on to Peter kind of quickly, of like starting to care about him. Like, there's the part when Peter has to save Gamora when her ship gets blown up, the little supposedly indestructible ships that they end up in when they're like trying to escape from Ronan with the orb and stuff, and she's like floating out there in space, and Peter puts his like mask or whatever, the breathing thing, on her, and Rocket's like, hey, what are you doing? Because he knows like Peter's gonna do something rash and is like getting upset if you're gonna die out here. Like, he cares that much already. I mean, even from the beginning of the movie, at least he has Groot. I almost wish you could see like how because I was wondering about that, of like how the two of them, Rocket and Groot, end up meeting each other, because like by the time, you know, the movie kind of officially starts, they're already together, you know, trying to find the orb. That's in a sense what's like nice with the prison. I really like the scene when they like get arrested and they're in that like lineup thing when they're being like identified by the Nova Corps, and then they get, and it's like right before they get like properly taken to jail, and it's like a nice way, you know, it's one of those scenes that's like for the audience to know like, okay, here's like kind of the basics of all of these characters, but it's done in like a natural way in the story where it's, you know, John C. Reilly's character has to explain of like who all these people are, and so they can like log them in the system and everything. So it like fits with the movie. It doesn't just feel like it's a moment of like, okay, it's just here to give you exposition, but it fits in with everything. But, you know, I'd forgotten some of those details. Like, it does list the thing of when they're talking about Groot, of him being like Rocket's hired muscle in a sense, to help him, you know, get around doing stuff. But you do see, and I mean, Rocket kind of bullies Groot throughout the movie, especially at the beginning. But you already know they're like friends anyway. You can already tell that Groot at least really cares about him. But it's especially the scene at the end after Groot sacrifices himself, where Rocket's like full on crying and everything, you know, because Groot's literally died. Well, not like, I mean, I guess, yeah, I didn't even really think about that too much. But no, let me finish my thought really quick first before I get into that. I feel like I'm bouncing all over the place with this. But yeah, you could see with that scene of like how, you know, emotional Rocket is, that like he really did care about Groot, and they were already like, he already has at least one friend throughout the whole movie. And I do like how the characters talk about, especially Rocket and Drax, about how they've like never really had friends before, and I do find it funny, but it's like very honest of Peter saying towards the beginning of like, wow, no wonder any of you have friends. You meet someone and you're already thinking about how to kill them, you know, because that's pretty much like everyone else's perspective in this movie, and it's only when they're forced to like work together and they kind of seem to develop to like have each other's backs and stuff, that they like actually start to care about each other, and they're like, whoa, I can like actually call this person my friend, you know. But yeah, I wondered about Rocket and Groot. I'm like, they're the ones I'm kind of the most curious. Like, you get their individual backstories, even though I think Groot's the one that's you kind of know the least about, of like where he's from or whatever, but in a way it kind of doesn't matter. But I'm wondering how they like first encountered each other. Anyway, oh shoot, I forgot my point I was gonna say. What was it? Okay, I remember. When I originally watched this movie, I thought that Groot in a sense couldn't really die. I thought he was kind of like a jellyfish, where it's just you revert back to like the baby form, as I'll call it, but you're like still the same individual, and it, in that sense, you can't really die. I thought it, you know, because it was almost like going from like a fully grown tree to back to a seed was the way I imagined, even though he's not like a literal seed, but he goes from like being fully grown here, and then he's like the little twig Groot that's treated as like a baby in a sense, and then you get to see him grow up with the other ones where he's like, I do actually really like the progression of that for the other movies, where he's like the little toddler Groot, or the baby Groot in the second one, and then in the Avengers movies like Infinity War and stuff, where he's a teenager, which is just kind of funny to me, where he doesn't feel like the same character, but like that's the point. And then that way, by the time of the third movie, he's like fully grown just in time for like the last Guardians movie and stuff. I'm assuming they're not actually, I don't remember. I think the third one did have a message of like something about the characters being back, and at the time I'm recording this too, because I'm recording this January 2026, I forgot there's the Avengers Doomsday movie that's supposed to come out, that's supposed to have like every character, whatever, but that's not out at the time I'm recording this, or any like trailers for it or anything, so I don't know at that point of how that involves like the Guardians characters and stuff. But then anyway, I had finished this. The reason I'm bringing this thing up about Groot and what I was like a little confused about originally, is that I watched this movie with my parents, and then we finished the movie, and we decided we were going to watch Endgame tomorrow, and then my dad was like, hey, can you go find on YouTube the scene of baby Groot dancing, like the opening of the second movie, and we watched that again, and that's really fun. That scene, I think out of all of them, it's like hard for me to pick between the first two, but I think in terms of like personal enjoyment and like how much fun I'm having, I think maybe the first one beats out the second one a little bit. I think I originally really liked the second one because I thought it was like funnier. I mean, probably also because they have Mantis with them. She's with them for like the second and third. I just really like her dynamic with Drax, which made it hard. I thought originally it was going to be like hard for me to come back to this movie because I thought, dang, she's not in it. But like Drax on his own is really funny. I have to talk about like the humor and music, of course, with this one too, but I'll get to that in a bit. But anyway, we watched the opening credits to the second movie again, and I noticed when they got to the like and featuring Vin Diesel as Groot thing, it doesn't, with this movie it just says like Vin Diesel as Groot, but then with the second movie it says Vin Diesel as baby Groot. I mean, I know, because Groot isn't an adult anymore, he's a baby, but that got me thinking like in how to interpret that. Could it also just mean like he doesn't have the same personality anymore? Maybe kind of almost like Gamora, where it's like it's still like physically the same individual, but you're not like you anymore, because like the first movie did treat it as like death before you see Groot as like the little twig once they're like back on the ship and everything. Like Rocket's pretty much mourning him. I even noticed that as the ship is crashing, which I was surprised the characters weren't like, a bit more panicked of like, hey, the spaceship is crashing, we should probably get out of here, or so. I mean, they couldn't because their own ship, Rocket, like crashed it, so they couldn't leave. I think they probably would have died if Groot didn't protect them, but I noticed like he looks a little nervous. When a character is gonna sacrifice themselves and they make this sort of face of like, in that second they're kind of mulling over in their head of like, am I really gonna do this and stuff, and they make that decision of like, okay, I gotta do the thing, to protect them, knowing they're gonna die, and he like fully grows his roots and just becomes basically like kindling on the ground when they actually crash and everything. I'm guessing that's like the death of like the personality of Groot, in a sense, that specific version of him is gone, and you get baby Groot in the next one, and he'll grow up and become like fully sized Groot again, but is it, you know, the same Groot with the same memories and everything? I don't know, I was just thinking about that. Let me see, what else? Yeah, it's kind of funny when I think of Yondu, I mostly think of the second movie. I think because he's like featured in it a little bit more, where he's kind of more of a main character, and his Mary Poppins line and his sacrifice. I really love the Mary Poppins line and the second line. There's so many good the writing in this movie is so good, and there's like so many good lines. I definitely do want to talk about this one with this movie. But I like how he is in this one too, where it's kind of funny with watching this one without the context of the second movie of like why Yondu. I mean, they joke about it in this one of like implying, you know, that Peter's dad isn't a good person because they're like name calling him and stuff, and of them being like, hey, it's a good thing we didn't take Peter to his dad like we were hired to do and stuff. Like they do kind of hint at it in that way, but the second movie, when you get to see what Peter's dad is like, you know that it's like you understand why Yondu took him, and even Peter understands of like, okay, this person's like my actual dad, you know. But with this, without the context of that, with just this movie, you know, with what Peter thinks, and probably the audience too, of like, damn, this blue guy just kidnapped this little kid right after he lost his mom, and, you know, never took him back to Earth or anything, and raised him among, you know, these like thieves and stuff. And I don't think they mention it in this one. I think it's in the next one of like how they had Peter, because he was like a kid, go through all the small spaces and made it easier for thieving or whatever, and the whole thing of like, it's kind of funny now, they mention in this one, or Yondu, whenever he threatens Peter of like, oh, I kept you alive, my crew wanted to eat you, and Peter's like, yeah, people usually don't say they want to eat each other or whatever. And then it's funny with the second movie, I think it's with the second one, where Peter's like, you always said they were gonna eat me, and Yondu's like, no, why would we eat you or whatever. But yeah, with this one, it just seems like he's this guy that kidnaps this kid and just never takes him home or anything to his grandpa, but then you get more of the context in the second movie, and you just view him in like a completely different way, but he's still like a really fun character here. And I mean, at least him and the Ravengers, I know it's that Yondu, you know, is promised the stone and stuff, but they do help with like defending, what is the planet called, Xandar, I think, and everything. And then, you know, like, Yondu's making all these threats to Peter throughout the movie and stuff, but then you get to that part. I really like the ending part with it's either with Ain't No Mountain High Enough, or it's I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. One of those. I think it's the first one that, yeah, I think it's the first one of those that plays when the characters are leaving the planet, and it's like the happy ending montage sort of thing, and you get to see what everyone's doing. And it has that part where everyone's laughing at Yondu, or I think they're just laughing or whatever, and he looks really upset, like kind of grumpy, and you see I love the close-up, like the camera, it switches for the shot in that scene of the orb container thing, and instead of the purple infinity stone, it's the little orange-haired troll doll. And instead of being upset about it, Yondu just smiles, because you know he's like a big softie when it comes to Peter. He's not actually gonna kill him or anything. Like at that point, you kind of understand more about those two. And Yondu was even saying, like, you know, when Peter had to like talk his way out of not being killed or something, and Yondu seems almost kind of proud of him, of, you know, being able to stand up for himself and kind of having an eyes for the prize sort of thing. So he doesn't even seem to care. He almost seems kind of impressed that he got the troll doll instead. I feel like there's another reason he could have been happy with it too, because, and I forgot about it, when he goes to the seller in Xandar, not the person that's trying to buy the Infinity Stone, but the guy with the weird eyebrows, as my mom called it, who was originally going to buy the Infinity Stone and then backed out, and Yondu wants to buy this like blue crystal frog thing. I didn't really know exactly what it was supposed to be, and the guy kind of makes fun of him for it or whatever, and then you see Yondu's like ship dashboard basically, and it has the blue frog and it has all these other little creatures, and then when a ship crashes, Yondu picks up the little blue frog off the ground and puts it in his pocket. You know what, the troll doll's gonna fit in like right there. It's kind of funny to me thinking about troll dolls now, because I don't remember if the review's posted or not by the time this one gets posted, because I kind of just post and watch things sort of out of order, mostly with the posting. But I watched the Trolls movies recently, like the DreamWorks ones, because there's like 3 of them. You'll get my thoughts on that in their own video, but I keep forgetting like what the actual Trolls doll, like the like it's an actual thing. Is like the DreamWorks ones are kind of like, they have the same concept. I'm just going to talk about Trolls for a minute here. As like the Trolls dolls of having the long hair and being like these little creatures, but they're like more cutesy looking with the DreamWorks ones and super colorful. But I like the design of the original Trolls dolls. I never had any. I'm assuming that's an 80s thing, because like Peter has so many 80s things in this movie. But I think they're sort of like ugly cute in a way. I kind of want one where they... I have to pull up a picture of a Trolls doll now. Hold on a second. Because I can picture the one he has in his head. I kind of want to... Great, I gotta like research Troll dolls now after this movie. Oh my gosh, they look like such little goobers. Oh, okay. They're made by some Danish guy. They're based on Scandinavian folklore. I'm just skimming through Wikipedia. Okay, they're actually made in the 50s. But then they became popular in the 70s. Okay, that makes sense. 70s through 90s. Yeah, that would line up. But yeah, they're just little goofy looking creatures, where they have those big glass eyes and their little plastic bodies or whatever. And then I love their hair. The material of their hair, I don't know what it is, but it just looks like the softest thing in the world. And just kind of fuzzy in the way it goes up and stuff. Yeah, I kind of want one. They look like little goobers. I want to put it on the dashboard of my car. But yeah, anyway, I bet Yondu probably put that little troll doll on the dashboard equivalent of his spaceship along with the others. Also, did you know that troll dolls wear clothes? If you go on the Wikipedia page, they have a picture of a troll doll. And it's in this adorable little wizard outfit. So cute. Okay, back to the movie, sorry. What else was I gonna say? Okay, I want to talk about the music and the comedy and stuff first, since I have more to talk about on characters, but I'm gonna forget about the music and comedy. Soundtrack's really good. I had the chance when I went to Disneyland. Last time I went to Disneyland, which was probably like more than 6 years ago, I can't remember now. I went on the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, the one that like drops you, and I screamed so freaking hard, but I remember having that adrenaline rush of wanting to go on the ride again, even though it's like one of the most terrifying experiences of my life so far, because I don't like those kind of rides. And I saw the soundtrack. I don't remember if they had it on like cassette or not. I think so, or if it was like the CD or something of the Awesome Music Volume 1 mix, and I really regret not buying it. I bought an Oswald the Lucky Rabbit doll, I think earlier instead or whatever. And my friends didn't want to hang around the gift shop. Yeah, I know I could listen to the soundtrack on Spotify, and I probably will. But yeah, I regret not buying it because the music in these are so good. I remembered some of the songs. Like, I think the I want to talk about the beginning of this movie actually, and like the tone shift. It's really interesting to me, and that relates to the music thing where, it's like you start off kind of depressing. Or no, not kind of. It is depressing. It's Peter as a kid, and he has to like watch his mom die, and then he gets captured by this blinding light, which turns out to be Yondu, but you don't know Yondu yet. And then you just see this guy with this weird mask, or what? Actually, no, I think Peter's mask looks kind of cool. Actually, I like that. He's a human with all of these like space aliens and stuff, but he has all these little gadgets and guns and this mask that lets him breathe in space. It's pretty cool. I also like his outfit as well. I'm a big fan of his like leather red long coat or whatever that I don't remember if he wears it like in every movie, but I at least remember for this one it's really cool. It's like a whole fit with the mask and everything. And you think he's just like this maybe intimidating person. You don't know who he is, and then you see him pull out the Walkman, and just from seeing that alone you're like, oh, okay, this is the same kid, and now he's just doing his own stuff in space and whatever. And just that whole it feels like a whole tone shift, really, where it goes from being like kind of depressing at the start, and I get this sort of vibe. You kind of calm down a bit, and it's like it's this vibe of like, yeah, everything's gonna be okay. You're not gonna have depressing stuff for a bit longer. When he turns on the music and it's Come and Get Your Love, and you get to see Chris Pratt's face, and he's just this goofy guy that's dancing around in these old like planet ruins or whatever, and it's like really funny to think about. Now that I think about it, and that's just great, because I feel like that kind of signals what sort of movie you're getting into at that point. Even before you meet any of the characters, you don't know who this guy is and why he ended up in outer space and what he's doing looking through these ruins or whatever. But hey, he got like a cool song on, he's dancing around. I mean, to be fair, this movie isn't completely silly. That's what I really like about it, actually. You have like these characters that have like really funny banter with each other. There's a lot of really good jokes in here. You got all the like super fun like 70s and 80s music. I think mostly 70s though, in here, and it all kind of keeps the tone like a bit more lighthearted. But then like every single one of these main characters has really depressing backstories where it's like they're taken from their homes and their families are dead, or they're experimented on or whatever. I don't know what Groot's is, but like everyone else's is like pretty depressing. So you have that, and that's all taken completely seriously, especially the scenes where it's like the group's trying to they kind of slowly bond over the movie, and they have their serious moments where they'll like confess about their backstory to each other, and they're all like very sympathetic with each other on those moments. They take it completely. I mean, I know Rocket makes the joke to Drax of like, oh, boo-hoo, your wife and child is dead, but like other than that, they all take it like pretty seriously and stuff, and that's real nice. And also the threat that they're facing of, I mean, they're not fighting Thanos yet, obviously they're not at that point, but at least with fighting Ronan, even without the Infinity Stone, you see Drax try to fight him and he does not win that fight. So he's already like a pretty tough dude. But then once Ronan gets the Infinity Stone, it's like, yeah, he's gonna destroy this entire planet. We gotta do something, guys. They have to ask all these other people to help them. Even when they get the stone, they have to like literally hold hands in a circle to contain its power and stuff. So it's like they have like a good like enemy to go against. Like the stakes are high, the movie does have serious stuff, but like the way it balances like the serious stuff and the more lighthearted stuff and the jokes and things, it all just blends together really good. I think that's why I really like this one. I'm not saying that tone changes for the other movies. I do feel like the third one's like the most kind of depressing out of all of them though, and then the second one just kind of feels more like a fun adventure. You don't have to worry about any stuff with like Thanos and the Infinity Stones, or you get to like take a pause from that stuff for a bit. But yeah, this one I think is just really good, in like the gang getting together and stuff. But yeah, that song's good. There's so many songs in here I really like, actually. Like Ain't No Mountain High Enough. The song that plays in the credits when it's like Baby Groot or like Twig Groot or whatever, and he's dancing, which that part's really funny. I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. That song's in one of the Just Dance games, and I was having a lot of fun with it, and the entire time I was like, where do I remember this song from? It's this, not from this movie, but you know. What else? I liked the part, I'm kind of connecting talking about the music to talking about specific scenes as well. Just, it kind of helps me remember. I like the way that's I think one of the things that kind of hurts the most of like watching these in the backwards order and just watching these and not any of the Avengers movies or like the other Marvel movies in the middle, of especially like Peter and Gamora and how their like friendship / slight romantic, it feels like by the time of the second movie, from what I remember, it felt like their relationship was definitely heading to like, yeah, it probably was going to turn romantic or more romantic soon, and then, you know, that got cut off by the other movies, and then they're like reduced to strangers for the third movie. But I think from going back to the other movies and then getting to watch his relationship with Gamora develop, I feel more understanding of like how upset Peter is. I mean, it gets like a little tiring in the third movie of like how he can't really let it go, which, you know, that's got to be hard, of course, if someone that you care about that deeply is suddenly just not able to remember you. And that's definitely gotta hurt. I'm not trying to minimize his pain on that, but it's more of like, it gets like a little tiring where you're like, okay, just let it go like a little bit, dude. I do still remember, and that's gonna be so hard for me with I don't remember if it's Infinity War or Endgame, but with one of those, I still remember in theaters because I was just like, damn, where they have the chance to get the Infinity Gauntlet or one of the stones or whatever away from Thanos, and Peter's the reason it gets fucked up because he gets too upset about Gamora in that specific moment, and it ruins everything, and that causes like half the universe to die. And I remember I was pissed about that in theaters. I'm like, damn, they could have actually stopped the villain before things got too insane, and Peter specifically the character that ruins it. But yeah, that's gonna be hard to see again, depending on which movie it is, because I didn't go to find Infinity War, I just found Endgame. But yeah, seeing his relationship with her in these and watching that sort of backwards order of how it goes from the beginning, it's kind of nice, and it makes it hurt more, where here it's like she does seem a bit softer with him very fast, actually. Where, you know, they're obviously like fighting over the orb at the start and stuff, and then you have the scenes where they're like alone together, where he's like talking about Kevin Bacon, which was kind of funny to me. And then she references that again later, and it's like so far towards the end of the movie that I completely forgot about the part where he's talking about Footloose, but it was like still funny, and like even without remembering that context. But I liked the scene. I think it's one of my favorites in this. It's like a little weird to watch, but I kind of like it, of when he's telling her about Footloose and stuff. Or I think it's more weird to watch in that he almost kisses her, and she's like, hey, I'm not one of your starry-eyed waifs, you know, I'm not gonna fall for, what did she say, your pelvic charms or some shit, which is good. I'm glad she puts him in his place with that, because I forgot, you know, at the beginning of this, he like literally has that girl in the t-shirt just on his ship and forgot that she was there. Like, you know, he's like a womanizer and stuff. And with Gamora, it's like he like actually grows to care about her and stuff, and past the like immediately trying to romance her thing. But yeah, the part when he's listening to music and she's trying to ask him like, hey, you risked your life and also my life, I guess, to go back for this thing, what does it do? And I just really like the part where he puts the headphones on her and it's that like kind of slow romantic song. I'm glad that they don't kiss or anything though, but I just like the way he views her here. You know, outside the kissing thing of even when he has to like save her life, you know, he doesn't have to do that when she's out there floating in space. He almost gives this look of just like, fine, I guess I gotta go save her or whatever, rather than like, oh, I have to save her because I love her sort of thing. It's more of like they become friends and they just kind of stay on that level in this movie, and I actually really liked that. But no, it is kind of sweet how they do grow closer with like the first two movies, so then it's hard when he has to, you know, eventually lose her and stuff. But yeah, I feel like that relationship of like rewatching it and, you know, seeing like from after he loses her and stuff and starting with that, you know, putting everything in context, even though I'm watching these backwards, like really really backwards, I think kind of helps. What else? I want to talk about Drax. Yeah, I want to talk about Drax as well. I think go back to Gamora though. I know this is already almost an hour. I don't care. Drax, I don't know if he becomes like smarter or more stupid, to put it a bit plainly, in like the following movies after this. I was like trying to remember. I think more so I'm remembering that he like kind of learns to, he actually does, I think by like the third one when he's with Mantis, learns to joke a little bit. He's like very blunt with her in the second movie, and then by the third movie they're like laughing and telling jokes and kind of teasing each other a bit. But then with this one, so he's a bit more loose, but then, you know, he also just isn't smart, or some of the decisions he makes. Like I was thinking back to when I watched the opening for the second movie where he's trying to pierce the hide of the giant creature they're fighting, and he thinks if he goes inside of the creature it'll make a difference, even though the skin of it would be the exact same from the inside. And then, you know, Gamora in a super badass way just kills the thing in like one go with her sword, and Drax still believes that he single-handedly took down the creature, you know. So his intelligence does not improve, but he gets like a bit more I don't know, chill, I guess. But I get it, you know, like he starts off with this one of like his single-minded revenge quest to kill Ronan, which is interesting because I don't know if it was supposed to be a joke in the movie or not, or what his reasons were or whatever. You know, he wants to kill Ronan because Ronan killed his wife and child, and that's like his big thing in this movie until, you know, he loses the fight with Ronan, and Rocket snaps him out of it of being like, hey, we've all lost someone, you can't let that like be in charge of your whole life and stuff, that like grief and pain. And Drax admits, I actually really like that scene where he says like, oh, I was trying so hard, all this anger and trying to kill Ronan and stuff just to like cover my loss, you know, and the fact that he's able to recognize that within himself and everything. And excuse me, and then it's interesting, like when Gamora at the end says, hey, you know, this is like after they've killed Ronan and they've saved the city and stuff. She's basically like, I know your wife and child would look down on you proudly for avenging them. And then Drax is like, yeah, but the real person I want to kill is Thanos, and he walks away, and Gamora gives this kind of look towards Drax, and the scene ends there. And I mean, eventually they do kill Thanos, you know, like a couple of movies later. I don't know how many movies later, but yeah, I thought that was interesting. Maybe I'll remember, it'll make more sense when I watch Endgame tomorrow. I don't know. But yeah, I think him and Rocket, for me in this movie, are like the two funniest characters. How Drax takes everything. He's from like a planet of people that takes everything very literally. It's funny to me, not specifically that, but the whole concept of like the alien characters, or I'm saying aliens in the sense of like not humans from Earth. I know there's a lot of like human ones, or they look sort of human, but they're not from Earth. That just don't understand the concept of like metaphors or, you know, actors and cultures of things from Earth, of Peter having to explain to Gamora. It's even in the same scene where they're having their little like nice together moment with talking about music or whatever, and he's talking about the plot of Footloose and mentions, oh, the people in Footloose have their sticks up their butt, and she's basically like, what the hell, that sounds really messed up. And he's like, no, it's just like an expression. And then having to explain the concept of metaphors to Drax, that was stuff that was like pretty funny, actually. Of just the whole culture clash, because, you know, like everyone's from a different planet. I mean, one of them's a raccoon. I feel like my opinion of Rocket has definitely changed between the first time I watched all three of these and then this sort of second overall rewatch for like the whole trilogy. Because I did find him like originally funny, and I felt like very sad for him the first time I watched the third movie. I still do, you know, like learning his backstory. It's like once you learn his backstory, I think you just overall view him in like a different way. But man, I forgot how freaking funny he is, especially in this one. Of just, I think especially with like how he is with Groot, and this is kind of the only movie I feel like he can be with that with Groot. I mean, they're together and Groot's like fully grown in the third movie, but because the movie I think focuses more on Rocket, it's not really like, it's more of like him as the individual, because he's basically like the main character of the movie. I don't remember him having as much screen time with Groot, of them like, you know, getting to chill and stuff. But here it's like the Rocket like teases Groot a lot, and Groot still cares about him and stuff. That tree has so much patience, man. But just them together, and especially because it's like all the characters meeting for the first time, where, you know, Rocket gets to be like a little bit more mean to the rest of the Guardians because they're all strangers. But I mean, that's also part of the thing of like becoming friends too. You get to like, I don't know, like tease each other and stuff, whatever. It's like part of the being friends thing. But yeah, I forgot how not just funny in this, but like how enjoyable of a character he is to watch, and what very little you get like hinted of his backstories as well. Because there's the part I mentioned, I think at the beginning of this video, when he's like drunk and saying about the being taken apart and put back together. But I forgot there's this one part when they're in prison, when they're having to change into the prison uniforms and stuff, the yellow jumpsuits, and Peter, and I like that there's no dialogue in that part, because it's, I think, part of the prison montage or whatever. Peter and Rocket are in the same room, and Peter looks over at Rocket, and Rocket takes off his like, I don't know, vest, armor, whatever, and you get to see the, not scars, but whatever the implants of whatever the hell the evolutionary did to Rocket, you know, when he was a baby, are on his back. Even now, you know, those things wouldn't be removed or anything. And that just tells so much in such a short little bit there, where, you know, there's no dialogue of like, hey, what what's going on with your back, what happened to you and stuff, but you see that and it tells you like everything you need to know and everything. Or especially the part when he's drunk, when he gets like emotional and he's Rocket's saying about like, I didn't ask for any of this or to be turned into this and stuff. And I feel like that explains, and it just makes more sense to me after watching the third movie, but like watching all of these together and stuff, it just makes so much more sense of why Rocket is so defensive around like he definitely can be a little shit for sure, and that's, you know, also by choice of like taking people's prosthetics and stuff, like their limbs and things, you know, for shits and giggles and stuff, and that's fine. I mean, no, that's like being a dick, but you know, that's like a part of that's his personality, you know, that's his choice to be an asshole. But I'm saying of like how he gets so defensive around everyone and feeling like everyone's out to get him is because he's been in like solely in like survival mode for so many years that he kind of finally starts to heal, you know, once the evolutionary's dead, and kind of facing his past in the third movie. What was I gonna say with that? No, I think that's about it actually, of like why he's so defensive, and it's nice when he you know, I mentioned at the beginning of this, he immediately kind of gets attached to, or not immediately, but it seems like Peter's the one he gets attached to first, of someone he's starting to care about and like kind of trusts more than the others and whatever. And for all his things of saying like, yeah, I'm gonna like kill you guys and this is all over, whatever, no, he kind of starts to let his guard down a bit of like caring about these other people, and it's really nice to watch. Nebula. Yeah, Nebula is also interesting. That's part of the reason I wanted to rewatch Endgame and probably also Infinity War. In my mind, I kind of just view those as one movie because it feels like one movie that's split into two parts, if I remember right. Which that's so weird now if I watch Infinity War, which will also be backwards because I have to watch Endgame first, because I'm going off of what my parents want to do with this. Unless I can find Infinity War and record it on YouTube TV before tomorrow night, and then I can say like, hey, we gotta watch this first. I'll have to see if I have time. And that also determines the order of when these get posted as well, just saying. But yeah, Nebula, it's kind of sad when I think about it. I was thinking about this earlier as I was watching this movie. I remember, you know, with this movie and the second movie where there's scenes where she's fighting Gamora and Gamora is saying like, hey, you can join me, we can stop Ronan together, you can... I remember with the second movie, they get into a fight, and I think it's with the second movie, Gamora says something of like, there's little girls like you across the galaxy, you can help them, and Nebula decides not to. She just leaves in both scenarios. And then it's kind of sad because then you could tell by the third movie, or something of that has like rubbed off on Nebula, where she basically like takes Gamora's place in the Guardians lineup and stuff, where Gamora, you know, she doesn't have the memories and stuff, now goes to join the Ravengers, and she's like happy there, you know, that's chill. And then Nebula sort of you know, without Peter and Gamora there, becomes like the new leader of the Guardians pretty much, where it's like her and Rocket doing stuff, and the others too, but it feels like those two are kind of in charge of everything, and it's kind of sad in a way, because like with the first two movies, you know, as Gamora's learning to care about other people and stuff, but even then with this one, she, you know, I'll get to that in a minute actually, when she's trying to convince her sister to join her, and then by the time her sister finally does decide to be like a force of good in the third movie, it's like Gamora, that version of Gamora is like long gone and kind of, you know, sadly can't see her sister's progress or anything. No, the other thing I was gonna say, what was it? Every time I have to like pause myself before I get on a new tangent, and then I forget what the new tangent is. No, it was more stuff about Nebula. The second or third movie, one of their conversations where Nebula finally admits, like, all I wanted was a sister and we were always pitted together against each other and stuff. I think that was the second movie. I was thinking about that while watching this one because, that sort of explanation hasn't happened yet. So, Nebula's still trying to kill her throughout this whole movie and stuff. No, I'm sorry. I was going to say something about Gamora. Actually, I forgot. So Gamora, I remembered with this one before I watched it of like, she and her sister, they work for Ronan, but, actually like Thanos and stuff. So they're, on like the villain's side, and she's an assassin. She doesn't care about really other people and stuff and is out to survive. But I find it interesting with this one, she changes her tune actually pretty quick. Like once they get to the because Peter's saying this stuff of like, yeah, we gotta sell the stone. Even like when she first meets him, she says something about him not having a sense of honor, even though, she's like literally an assassin or whatever. But at the very beginning, she tells them once they get in jail of like, yeah, I was gonna betray Ronan and Thanos, and I was gonna sell the stone to another bidder and get it. Even though it was she's gonna sell it to the collector. I don't know why I said another bidder, like the highest bidder. No, Thanos wasn't gonna buy it from her or anything. But even though she was gonna, sell it to the collector, and it wasn't to like keep it out of like Thanos' hands or anything. It was just she wanted to buy her way to a better life and not work for any of them anymore. That is at least something to start off with, of like even at the beginning of the movie she's planning on leaving them, but then she's the one and kind of the only one really saying it once they finally get to the collector and they get to see what's actually inside of the orb, and that it's the Infinity Stone and the amount of power it has. She's immediately like, hey, we have to keep this out of Ronan's hands. Not just that of like, we have to keep it out of Ronan's hands. She does not care about the money anymore, and she's like, he's gonna destroy this planet with all these innocent people. We gotta do something about this. The fact that she wants to go save them, and she, like I said, she doesn't care about the money anymore, or any allegiance to like Ronan and Thanos, and she wants to specifically give it to the Nova Corps for like safekeeping and stuff, which is going to be funny when I watch Endgame, because this movie, they're like very triumphant at this sort of happy end of like that Nova Prime and all her like generals, soldiers, whatever, and they have the purple Infinity is that like the power one or something? I don't remember with the purple one. I'm assuming that's like the strong one or whatever, because I know all the Infinity Stones have like weird abilities. I think purple is just like the strength one or something. They have it under lock and key on this planet, but eventually Thanos is gonna get them all anyway. I'm assuming that planet, if I don't remember, I will remember like once I watch the movie, but just taking the guess here of like, I'm assuming that planet's getting like fucking destroyed or something, and he's gonna go and get that Infinity Stone. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened on screen, which would suck, because the whole point of the end of this movie was for them to save that, not just get the Infinity Stone away from Ronan and Thanos, but to specifically save that planet and everything. But yeah, the fact that she's the first one, and it's really fast too, like as soon as she knows it's an Infinity Stone, she's like, yeah, he's gonna kill all these people. The fact that she wants to save them and the others have to be convinced into it and stuff, I feel like that already says a lot about her character, and that she can and does have good intentions. I was just surprised that it was like her of all people that wanted to immediately at that point like start this impossible quest to like save everybody. I don't know. I guess she's more of a good person deep down than I even remembered with like this movie. Because I know she gets more character development and stuff with the other ones, and being part of the Guardians and helping people and stuff, and she's like chill with it and everything. It's like normal by the second movie for all of them, but yeah, I didn't remember it was like her originally with this one that at that point wants to help them all. What else? Sorry, I'm just thinking about the fact that I watched this with my parents, which was super fun actually. My dad and I both have, I feel like I have to give some comedic background for my parents really quick in terms of movies. My dad and I have just not completely the same sense of humor in that he and this isn't like to make fun of him or anything. I want to clarify about that. He likes movies that are kind of a bit more stupider. I'm thinking of stuff like Step Brothers, which is really funny, than I do, of kind of more of like the, I guess you could call it the easier humor, if that makes sense, that he'll laugh at and I won't. I do find Step Brothers funny. That just immediately came in my head as an example. My sense of humor is kind of just permanently ruined by the internet, I think, and being on the internet and memes where I will laugh at like the dumbest things that don't really make sense, that I can't really explain to my like older parents and stuff. But in terms of movies and in terms of like comedy movies specifically, because that's usually what I watch with my dad, I think he and I have like similar levels in taste in that way, for the most part. And everyone was laughing with watching this movie. I mean, my mom was there too. Her comedy levels are not the same, but the fact that everyone was laughing just because the movie was that funny, and at a lot of the same jokes, when you'll watch stuff with people and sometimes one person finds something funny and the rest don't, everyone has different senses of humor, but the fact that like we were watching this, we were all enjoying it, everyone was laughing at the same stuff because it's just that well written and that funny. I feel like that, like I had to give that example with my family, but the fact that everyone found it like consistently funny throughout the movie, I feel like says a lot about it, in terms of its writing and humor and stuff. It was just especially funny for me watching my mom, but like both my parents laughing at the same stuff, but especially my mom, because it's usually like we'll watch something with her and my dad and I'll laugh and my mom doesn't laugh. My mom does find stuff funny, but it's not as often, so that was surprising but really nice. But then again, my parents and I love all three of these. I was literally asking them after we were done with this one, I'm like, okay, how come we don't have these on DVD? So now it's my mission to find all these on DVD. But yeah, these are I think that's all the points I wanted to talk about. I don't remember. Yeah, this movie's just really good. Though I think the whole series is good. I could pick probably any of them as being, they're all very well written and have their mix of serious and happy things. The music is good. I like all the characters and stuff. I think my one thing is there's so many good characters, but the fact that they're kind of more spread out throughout the series, right? Like Yondu's only in the first two, and then Mantis, is only in like 2 and 3. They don't have the gold people until really mostly like the third movie. They're also in the second one, but they're like kind of more of the villains there. And then you get to see more of the Ravengers in like the second movie and stuff, and more about them. It's like you have all these really good characters, but they're all kind of spread out throughout the trilogy that you don't get them all at once, which then makes it hard when you're rewatching, where you're like, or at least with me, I'm like, oh, so and so is missing, and then I have to remember they don't exist yet in the movies. That's like my one thing, honestly. And that's small. That's small, and that makes sense, of course, of having to introduce and kill off these people over time and stuff. But they're all really good. I feel like any of them I'd be happy to watch at any point. I mean, the third one actually is like kind of a bit depressing, more so than the others in my opinion. So I feel like I have to be in the right mood for that one. The other two I can just watch whenever. They're hilarious. They're more lighthearted. The third one's funny too, but like a little bit more of a serious tone. I think also because it's set after like the stuff in Endgame and Infinity. The whole group dynamics different. They don't have Gamora anymore. It's not really the same vibe, and then at the end everyone not everyone, but like at least 3 of them go off their separate ways, and the Guardians continues even though it's kind of under like a bit more new leadership now with Nebula there, but the original Guardians is like disbanded at that point. So whether you remember about that or not at the end of the third one, even without that, it's still more of like a bittersweet movie overall, but they're all really good and stuff. Yeah, I think the first one's my favorite. I don't know which is the funniest. They all have really good jokes. I think humor-wise, like I mentioned, a lot of Rocket and Drax's lines, but I think surprisingly mostly Rocket's were just really funny. I keep forgetting. I actually want to talk about the actors for a second. Of like how many like big names are in these. I don't really watch Bradley Cooper in that much stuff. I think the last thing I saw him in was A Star Is Born. With I think Lady Gaga's in that one too. So I'm used to seeing his face and stuff, but I don't watch him in a lot of stuff. I always forget that he voices Rocket. And when I hear him in this movie, I don't even think like, oh, that's Bradley Cooper. I'm like, yeah, it's the funny talking raccoon that's in this movie and stuff. And I think that's good. Sometimes that does distract me with voice acting when it's like an actor I know. If I've seen them in a lot of stuff and I know their voice, it'll be weird of like, oh, it's just this person coming out of this like, they're voicing this character and stuff. So it's nice in these situations where I just or the character is so memorable or something that I just completely forget who's voicing them or whatever. This is the thing. I know that Chris Pratt, I think kind of gets introduced to most people, or was it his first role in like Parks and Rec? But I think I watched these movies first, actually. I didn't watch Parks and Rec when it was airing. I watched it like later. But he's great in that. I think as Andy, yeah. And I know he's in like so many things now, and I do get a little tired of it. I'm kind of bummed that he voices Mario, but that's like a different thing, because he doesn't change his voice or anything. He's just Chris Pratt. And I think it was this and like Jurassic World that kind of got him more like well known or whatever. But then when I'm watching him in this, even now, even when I got tired of like seeing him in so many things, which I think has been like a little bit less now, I see him and I'm like, I can't see anyone else as as Star-Lord, as Peter Quill. He just kind of is the character to me. And it is great because Peter's, he's just some guy that's really, and he's out there in space, and he, with all these aliens and stuff, and he's having to explain about like actors and music and 80s culture and stuff, and it's funny, but it also has a lot to do with this character and the little troll doll he has in his spaceship, and the cassettes with and the Walkman and everything. It's like a whole thing, but yeah, he's great as this character. They all do really good, honestly. I keep also forgetting that Vin Diesel is Groot as well. That was always just I like laughed at that whenever that was on screen. And just the fact that Vin Diesel, except for the part when Groot says "We are Groot," which still makes me not like teary-eyed, but I do get a little sad, when Groot sacrifices himself. Oh wait, I forgot to talk about some things with Groot. I forgot to talk about Groot. damn, I'm gonna talk about Groot, but you know, Vin Diesel gets paid however much in this movie. If I'm assuming he's getting paid to say "I am Groot," the same 3 freaking words, but in like different tones of voice throughout the entire movie. And with the rest of the other movies too, and that's just so funny to me because he's like this like well-known actor, whatever. He's the Fast and Furious like Family Guy, but he sounds he's freaking Groot. You know, he's sorry, hold on a minute. He's just the voice of Groot. It like works or whatever. I didn't think I was gonna laugh at that. Damn it. No, Groot. I think the reason. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know the reason in the movie he goes from like fully grown and he just straight up like dies. He sacrifices himself and he becomes a baby, is because, you know, he sacrifices himself in that crash to save the lives of everybody else. But I kind of feel the other reason I sort of like it is with watching this one before his sacrifice, he's so overpowered, not like just physically strong, because they have a lot of heavy hitters. No, not really. It's mostly just Groot and Drax in terms of like kind of more muscle physical strength, because like Gamora's got all these swords and stuff and she's very agile. Rocket has all these big ass guns, and Star-Lord has the 2 guns. I do actually like that he has guns and Gamora has swords and stuff. I think that's cool. But yeah, not only Groot is basically like a Swiss Army knife of just whatever the hell they need in their situation, and he's so convenient with that I think it makes him overpowered, and it's kind of actually good they took him down a notch. Of not that they needed to set him to like literally turning him into a baby, but besides what goes on in the story, you know, but to make him less powerful because it lets the others, it was kind of making things a bit too easy in a sense where they could use him for anything. You know, he makes his one of his root fingers really sharp, you know, when he stabs Drax in the neck and saves his life. They go in a dark room Drax can't see. He releases these firefly things. Actually, I did really like that scene. I thought it was pretty, and the characters looked like they were in such awe of seeing the lights. But yeah, he turns into like a flashlight basically. Oh, the ship we're on is crashing and our ship is crashed and we can't leave the ship. It's gonna turn into a big ball of roots and twigs and shit, and he's gonna protect them and save their lives from this spaceship crash. He's gonna give flowers to children, and he's gonna trap people in his overly long tree arms and swing them around and whatever. But yeah, he can do freaking anything, so they did kind of need to take him down a notch. It just makes it's fun to watch it, and it makes him, you know, he's a useful member of the team. You get to see those uses, but it does make him like makes things a little too easy, because then it is kind of nice in the other movies how you get to see the group, like Baby Groot does do stuff and rides little creatures and things, but it gives more of the others kind of a time to shine. And I was even thinking about that, like after Groot died and then they had to fight Ronan. And then, I mean, not that they have to have like a cool fight with him with all their weapons and abilities and things, which would have also been cool. But, you know, they do I remember thinking like, they don't have Groot here, what are they going to do? But they do, I do like that they do the circle thing, which even gets told in the lore from the Collector earlier in the movie, where he's like, yeah, there's the group of people that held hands and then they all died, and then they hold hands in this at the end of this one and they survive, which I like how they even do kind of explain, you know, once the the Xandarians or whatever they're called are like, hey, Peter, you're not completely human, and Gamora's just like, oh, hey, maybe that's the reason you could hold on to a freaking Infinity Stone for so long by yourself and you didn't just immediately burst into flames. They even got explanations for that within the same movie. But yeah, they all hold the stone, and that was really nice too. It shows of, you know, they didn't have to do that. They did need to stop Ronan, but you know, they knew what was coming with getting the power of that stone, and they all hold hands with Peter anyway, and they all, it does allow them to hold the stone without dying, and just the whole part where they kill Ronan is great. I want to talk about that in a minute, but just the fact that they trust each other enough at that point to go through that like physical pain, like literally together and stuff. It's like their friendship and like testing how tight their bonds are in like a visual form. And I love the part when they kill Ronan because you know it's supposed to be a cool moment. They all got the weird purple veins and Peter's eyes are glowing and it makes him look cool, and Ronan's like, how are you able to defeat me and to hold the stone, you mortal, or whatever. And I feel like I'm gonna quote this wrong. What is it? Peter looks at him and he says, you said it yourself, bitch, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy. And then he opens his hand and causes Ronan to basically crack into like a million little pieces or whatever. But I didn't think he was gonna. It's a cool line, and it is funny to me, you know, because they call themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy from that point onwards, and it was literally just from the villain making fun of them. But it is a great name. It's perfect. But where they like officially take that role. I did not expect Peter to call him a bitch, and that made me laugh too hard when I was watching the movie, especially because there's not really any cursing. I don't think anyone says like the F word. I know Rocket says like freaking and stuff. I think they say hell at some point. It's like PG-13 swearing. I think PG-13 movies are the ones that do get at least to say, you know, like the F word at least once. I feel like if there's anybody in these movies who's gonna do it, is Rocket. I was actually almost expecting it because I didn't remember what the movie was rated. Is it on the poster? No, it's not. I'm assuming it's like PG-13 though. I don't think this is R, you know. I got to see this in theaters as a teenager, but yeah, when did this come out? 2014? Yeah, I got to see this as a teenager, which was great because I feel like I was like just the right age for this movie, honestly, where I was like old enough to get like some of the like adult jokes and like the PG-13 cursing and stuff, and I was like, yeah, this is really cool, but I was also like mature enough to understand the story and everything. It was like just the right time for me to watch Marvel movies, which is a shame because like my older sibling and my mom would go to watch like the Marvel movies before these, like seeing Captain America and stuff in theaters and whatever. And I was a kid. I didn't know anything about Marvel, and I thought, oh, I don't think I even knew they were superhero movies. I just thought they were really serious, and it's like, I thought they would be boring. I didn't care to see them. I wanted to go see like Despicable Me instead, you know. Now I'm interested in the Marvel movies, not like entirely with Marvel, but the movies are fun at least. Or I haven't watched like any of them past Endgame, so I don't know if the current ones are good. But yeah, that's Guardians. Really good. They're all really good. I wish there was more for me to talk about, but you know, there's only like 3 of them. I mean, with the scenes with the Guardians, at least from what I remember with Infinity War, they kind of feel like a mini Guardians movie. So I get to talk about that if I get to watch Infinity War. I just mostly remember with those where it's Rocket and Groot, and for some reason Thor is with them, and Thor's going through some shit, and I don't remember why. But it's kind of like a similar Guardians vibe. At least Rocket and Groot are there. I don't really remember. I'm gonna find out tomorrow with one of these movies. But yeah, overall they're really good. They're all good. First one's just a really fun watch. I love it. I need to buy it on DVD. Fun to watch with your family too. I can like vouch for that as well. Because with if I tried to watch like any other Marvel movie, like the individual ones that aren't like Guardians or like an Avengers movie, my entire family like together wouldn't care. But the fact that we all like these is kind of nice. So it's like a nice movie I get to watch with my family. Plus, they're just really fun. As you can probably tell from what the movies I review, though I do have my fair share of like serious ones or romance ones or whatever that I watch as well. I watch all kinds of stuff really. I like comedies and I like movies that are funny. So these were like this was perfect for me to get into the Marvel movies. I mean, I don't find every Marvel movie funny. I find a lot of the one-liners really cringe and they got tired very fast, but this one is like genuinely funny, I can say. All right, so that's it for me with Guardians. You're gonna get more Marvel stuff. Order of that depends on which ones my parents wants to watch first. So see you next time for some of those. Bye bye.